We're only days away to 2021. Can you believe it? Because I cannot. But I think that means it's time to put together our top 10 favorite games that we played in the year of 2020. Now, I just wanted to mention that this top 10 list is mine and mine alone. This is based on my personal opinions and the games that I played in 2020. Unfortunately, we don't have time to play all the games that we ever want to play, so if I don't mention a game that you might be anticipating, then I apologize. I should also mention that this list will include games that didn't necessarily come out in 2020. I think there are a couple ports in here, and some honorable mentions also include games that didn't release in 2020 at all, but just ones that I played this year. Hopefully that makes sense, but basically what I'm trying to say is that this is my personal top 10 list for 2020, the games that I played and the games that I enjoyed. So if you want to find out what games I enjoyed playing this year, please feel free to continue watching. By the way, my name is Kat. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining. I think a lot of you are coming from my most recent Switch collection video, so hey, if you're watching this, welcome to the channel and thanks so much for being a part of it. Now let's get to the video. Now, starting off with number 10 on my list is Mafia, the definitive edition. I have the actual game itself in my TV console outside, so I didn't want to grab it, but I'm having a nice time with it. I first played Mafia 2 and then eventually Mafia 3, which I didn't finish. I did finish the second one. So when I heard that they were coming out with a definitive edition of part 1, I knew that I wanted to pick it up and experience the story as well. If you're into the whole, true crime storyline set in the 1930s, playing as, obviously, someone from the Mafia, this might be something worth picking up. It's almost like playing through an interactive film. I am enjoying the story. I haven't finished it yet. I would say there is a little bit of a challenge to it, particularly with the driving. Maybe it's just me. Please tell me it's not just me. But yeah, I'm finding it a little bit challenging for any of the missions that you're driving in, and a little bit of a spoiler alert, just skip like 20-30 seconds from this part if you don't want to hear and you haven't played the game yet. There is a mission where you have to do a race on a racetrack, and it was so challenging for me. I don't know what it was. Please tell me that I'm not the only one struggling with the driving in this game. It's set in 1930s Chicago. I have a huge appreciation for that era and also the following era in Mafia 2. So if you're into that, it's really nice to be able to kind of take a peek into those times through a video game. I think the story is pretty good as well. I found that I wanted to keep playing to find out more about the character and just play through more of it. I wish though that there was a little bit more flexibility with the exploration, but I would say the gameplay is a bit more linear. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too spoiled with all these open world games that are coming out. We do have to remember that this game is a remake of an older title, but nonetheless, I am enjoying it either way. Number 9 on our list is Trials of Mana, which is a digital download only on my Switch. I hope you are able to see that a little bit, but it's a remake of the classic Seiken Densetsu 3, which released in 1995. I don't believe it ever came out in the West, so this is the first time that it actually came out in North America that is localized. I came into this game completely blind. I've never played any of the Mana games, 1, 2, and obviously 3 as well. I don't think you needed to play 1 and 2 to be able to get into this game, so it was nice. I kind of went into it with a fresh perspective. What I liked about it is I picked Angela for my main and Duran and Hawkeye for my second and third characters. I would say that the story for each character is a little bit on the simpler side, and I found that the combat and sort of the mechanics of the game overall reminded me a lot of Ys 8. Because I haven't played any other Mana games, I don't really have any other ones to compare it to. But that being said, I'm enjoying my time with it. I'm also not done it yet, but I'm looking forward to finishing this game. The art style is beautiful, by the way. I do like the character models and the world in this game. Overall, very reminiscent of more classic JRPGs in many different ways, and very much enjoyed it. Number 8 on my list is another digital download on my Switch, which is Mortals Phoenix Rising. I'm hoping you can see that. I love this game. I'm having a really nice time with it. It's, if you were to put together the gameplay of Assassin's Creed with the visuals and the mechanics of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but set in Greek mythology, and add in a pretty lighthearted, funny storytelling with Zeus and Prometheus as the narrators. I'm having a really nice time with it. I haven't gotten too far, but I love the exploration. I'm really enjoying collecting new weapons and armor and just upgrading all the skills and stats and everything. But I think if you enjoy games made by Ubisoft and also looking for something that might be similar to Breath of the Wild, this is definitely something that I can recommend. Or if you haven't tried Breath of the Wild yet, this might be, at least again in my opinion, a little bit more approachable than Breath of the Wild. And I'm speaking by experience only because when I first started playing Breath of the Wild, I did find it a little bit challenging because it was one of the first games that I've played that was completely open world. The story wasn't linear at all. There wasn't a guide for where to go first. The weapons kept breaking. I kept running into enemies that were way too strong for me. So I did find that part of Breath of the Wild challenging until I eventually got into it. But this game, I would say, is like a Breath of the Wild light in a way, if that makes sense. I think it's a little bit more approachable for maybe new players or casual players like myself. So if that sounds like something that may interest you, it might be worth having a look into it. Number 7 is Pokemon Shield, particularly the 2 expansion passes that came out this year, which is Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. It came out in the spring and summer of 2020, and they're both like 2 entirely new adventures off of the main game. So I really found it to be worth it. There's new story, new characters, hundreds of new Pokemon to catch. So it definitely encouraged me to revisit the game and reminded me why I enjoyed it so much in the first place. For those that may not know, if you're new to the Switch or new to Pokemon, Pokemon Sword and Shield is the most current gen of Pokemon that is out at the moment. There are a lot of polarizing opinions about this game, but just speaking from my personal experience, I had a great time with it. I think that it provided a nice bridge between the previous Pokemon games that we all know and love and the new Pokemon games that are to come in the future. You know, it had a lot of the things that we're very familiar with. The story, though pretty simple and I would say on the easier side, it's Pokemon, you know, it's meant to be played by all ages. So I think if it were more complex, it might throw off the younger gamers. And I don't know about you, but when I first started playing Pokemon, I think my first game was Fire Red on the GBA. If the story was a bit more complex, maybe it would have turned me away off from the franchise. So I can see why they made the decision to make this game the way it is, especially being the first mainline Pokemon game on a new system. But it also showed the potential of what future Pokemon games can do. You know, it introduced a lot of new things, the biggest one being the open world, which is new to Pokemon games. Also, the online multiplayer aspect where you can enter those raid battles with random people online or through local multiplayer or your Switch friends or whatever. I think it was a nice mix, you know, with all the familiarities keeping old and new fans alike interested in the franchise. My number 6 this year, and I really wish I could put this game in a higher spot, but it's Cyberpunk 2077, which I'm also doing a Let's Play series on my channel, by the way, so please feel free to check that out if that's something that you might like. The reason why I couldn't put it higher is because I just haven't spent that much time on the game yet. I did see a video of Isha Gaming, which mentioned very similar opinions, and I feel the same way. I'm loving the game. I find the world to be very colorful and immersive, and I really want to get to know all the characters more. I haven't played a game like this in a while where I couldn't put the controller down. I really am having a nice time with the game. Although not without its flaws, I am playing on an Xbox One X. I have experienced some bugs in the game, but nothing game-breaking. I think with CD Projekt Red, I have no doubt in my mind that they will do everything they can to improve on the game. The gunplay is probably my favorite part of the game, being a fan of FPS games, which might not be something you know about me. It feels really great, you know, you can feel the difference in the guns and even the melee weapons that you yield, and it does really feel like you're involved in the fight whenever one is going on. I'm considering starting a playthrough with a different life path on my PC, just so, you know, I can experience the game the way that is intended to be, I guess, with all the ultra high settings and the RTX enabled and whatnot, if I could ever get my hands on these darn evasive 30 series cards. I would say that all these games that I'm talking about are very close contenders, but I just had to sort them out in a 1 to 10 spot. So all of these I do love almost equally for different reasons. So again, I probably would have ranked it way higher if I had more time with the game, but if it's just a question of whether it's good or bad, I would say it is a must play. Now we've reached our top 5, and my number 5 spot would have to go to Spiritfarer. Spiritfarer is an indie game. It is a beautiful little gem that I am loving right now. It is described as a management sim game and a sandbox action game. In a nutshell, it's about you taking on this role of being a ferry master. You pick up souls from the recently deceased and you help them take care of their unfinished business so they can pass on to the afterlife. It is a very wholesome, heartwarming game while also tackling some more serious notes such as grief, sadness, you know, saying goodbye to your loved ones and having to deal with that. But it also underlines the importance of creating lasting memories and good times while you are with, you know, your loved ones or the people that matter to you. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but that is what life is. It is a beautiful and I'd say unique experience nonetheless. I don't think I've ever played any other game that can compare to Spiritfarer, so I do highly recommend. Number 4, which I don't know if this will come as a surprise to some of you, but it is actually Warzone. Call of Duty Warzone, which I can't show right now. It's installed in my PC behind me. It came out March this year, so kind of that beginning, you know, stages of lockdown in my city when the thing that shall not be named happened to the rest of the world. I don't remember really getting into any Call of Duty games since I would say Black Ops 1 or 2. I remember around that time, you know, really getting into the zombies mode mostly. And many of my friends at school then were all over the multiplayer. For whatever reason, from then until now, I stopped playing FPS games, and I think I dove more into story-driven games and also kind of sim games. There was also a huge period when I didn't play video games at all, so I think, you know, when I started to get back into it, I was more so looking for the casual experiences. A little fun fact actually, one of the first games I've ever played and did get me into gaming was Half-Life Counter-Strike on Windows XP or something like that. I was quite young at the time. I don't know who was letting me play these games, but I have to say I was pretty good at it. So I do like FPS games, and especially finally having built my first PC, like a proper gaming PC, I'm really enjoying getting back into all these FPS titles. But anyway, we're here to talk about the games on my top 10 list. So back to Warzone. I really don't know what it was about this game that pulled me back into the series. It actually made me want to play the entire campaign of Modern Warfare and also the more recent Cold War 2, which I'm still playing through. And obviously it goes without saying that the multiplayer on both of these games are so much fun as well. I think it was great because it also came at a time when, you know, we were staying at home, and it allowed me to play and interact with some of my friends who are into the series as well. Everything about it, the maps, the weapons, the gameplay is just... I'm not saying I'm amazing at it, by the way, okay? Let's get that straight, but I can still have a really great time with it. My number 3 spot will have to go to Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. For those of you who might not know, Story of Seasons was the then Harvest Moon series. So the new Harvest Moon stuff isn't actually by the same people. To my understanding, the 2 studios that were responsible for the original Harvest Moon games split up. The other company owns the name Harvest Moon, but Marvelous, who is responsible for the Story of Seasons games, are the ones that actually created, you know, the whole thing. So if you're looking for the classic Harvest Moon experiences, they are now called Story of Seasons. I don't know if I explained that quite well. It's very confusing. This is a remake of the 2003 Game Boy Advance game Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, which I played very diligently. I was so good at maintaining my farm. And I played it again and again and again through the years. And my experience with this game is just how I remember the Game Boy one to be, with a fresh coat of paint, of course. It perfectly captures everything that I loved about the original game and so much more. So if it isn't obvious already, this is a farming sim, a little bit of a life sim as well. And don't quote me on this, but I think it pretty much birthed a lot of farming sims that were released through the years, even including the beloved Stardew Valley, which I also love playing, of course. Games like these for me, you know, are just such a nice break to have between the really heavy story-driven games or stressful first-person shooters like Warzone. It's just really relaxing to play at the end of the day, to wind down, and I think you'll find the same if you decide to try it out and you haven't already. But if you're already a fan of the genre and you haven't picked up a Story of Seasons game, most especially Friends of Mineral Town, I do encourage you to try it out. Now my number 2 would have to go to Persona 5 Royal. This is a revamped version of the original Persona 5. There are tons of new content added to the Royal version compared to the original. New characters, new stories, and so much more. If you haven't played Persona 5 yet and you are thinking about it, I would definitely say that this is the way to go. It's a JRPG, dungeon crawler, life sim, all in one. The story follows a high school student that discovers that he has abilities, and he meets other students that have the same. Basically, they can manifest a physical version of their psyche, and that is what is called their personas. Everything about this game, the art, the story, the music, it's all so good. The characters are really fun to get to know as well. I did play the original Persona 5, I never finished it, but I'm replaying everything through Persona 5 Royal, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. There's so much things to do, so it's definitely not something that you'll finish quick. I would recommend taking your time with this game. I'm so glad that I found this franchise. My very first Persona game was actually Persona 4 Golden on the PS Vita, and I am never looking back. I'm so excited to play more of this series for more of their games to come. Before talking about my number 1 game for 2020, I did want to include 5 honorable mentions, and they're honorable mentions because not all of these came out in 2020, and some of these I haven't spent as much time playing with as well. But I wanted to mention it because they are games that I genuinely enjoyed this year, and in no particular order. One of them is Halo, the Master Chief Collection. I picked this up this year because I'm excited for Halo Infinite to come out, hopefully soon if it doesn't get delayed again. But I wanted to, yeah, play the old classics once again and just get into the game. I haven't played Halo in a while, but I was a huge fan, especially of Halo 3 when it came out on the 360. You might see actually Master Chief right behind me. So I love the franchise. I can't wait to play the new release, and this was my way of kind of re-immersing myself back in the storyline. I've forgotten a lot about it already, but it's just as fun as I remembered. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I haven't played enough of it because I got it just before I got Cyberpunk 2077, so unfortunately it was overshadowed by Cyberpunk, but from what I have played so far, it is a nice time. I wasn't sure initially if I was going to like it because the story, obviously, with the whole Viking theme is so different from previous Assassin's Creed games that we all know and love. It is a nice sort of fresh take to the series, and I'm looking forward to playing more of this when I have time, whatever that is. Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I will also have to mention, although none of these games originally came out this year, the collection did. So it was nice to revisit old favorites. You know, I actually have never played Super Mario Sunshine because I had never owned a GameCube, but I've heard great things about it, so it was fun to be able to check it out and also replay 64 and Mario Galaxy. If you've never played any of those three games, this is the collection to get. Or if you're just into Mario in general, if you've played through Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario games will always be a classic. It's always fun to replay, so that's why I made it to my list. The last two games on my honorable mentions list is a digital download on my Xbox, so I can't show you, but one of them is Doom Eternal. Now, Doom Eternal is the first Doom game, believe it or not, that I've ever played. It released on the same day of my #1 game, hint hint, but you probably already know what it is. It's a very fun sort of arcadey type shooter game, a lot of action, tons of demon slaying, obviously that's what the game is about. All of you probably are more familiar with it than I am. It reminds me a lot of the shooter games that I would always play in arcades when I was younger, so it's a lot of fun. It can be challenging, still really like it though. And lastly, also downloaded on my Xbox, so I can't show you, but it is The Outer Worlds. It is like a mix of Fallout and BioShock, I want to say. It's set in space, it's a first-person adventure. The storyline is pretty good. I'm quite close to finishing this game. You know, I have all the characters unlocked. I quite enjoy the weapon upgrading, and all the skills, and the shooting feels great as well. I do recommend that you would check it out if you're into, you know, FPS games, especially with a sci-fi twist. And the #1 game on my list, which probably comes to no surprise to any of you, but Animal Crossing New Horizons. So this copy, like I mentioned in my collection video, is sealed because I have it downloaded on my Switch. I can't imagine going through lockdown without this game having released. Besides everything I was already looking forward to, being a long time Animal Crossing fan since the DS days. It just became a staple, you know, for myself and for a lot of people that I know, and obviously it swept the whole internet as well. For the year we've all had, this game was so crucial to a lot of people's well-being and mental health. At least it was for me. It was an escape, a literal island getaway amidst everything that was happening around us. It allowed me to see and hang out with close friends and even some of my family. It let us hang out and celebrate birthdays and other events that we couldn't otherwise do in person. It's such a wholesome game for all ages, and I feel like anyone can pick it up, you know, from young to old, from new players to veterans. My niece and nephew, both very young, enjoy this game. If you're part of the Animal Crossing community, you may have heard of the Animal Crossing grandma named Audie. She went viral on YouTube because her grandson showed her tour for Animal Crossing New Leaf, and she now has New Horizons. So, you know, it's for everyone to enjoy. Like what I said about Friends of Mineral Town, it's just a nice, relaxing game to play in between all the other sort of heavier, more serious games that we all play. I have a lot of love for this game, and I know a lot of you do as well. But that brings us to our number 1 of our top 10 games in 2020. What did you think of my list? Leave a comment down below. Tell me what's your top 10 list for the year. I'm very curious to know what everyone else is playing. Like the collection videos, I also love watching top 10 lists because I love finding out about what other people are playing, you know, their own favorites, and maybe finding things that I will enjoy as well. As always, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you, and until next time, see ya.